All right. Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind podcast, where we unpack what actually works in B2B SaaS partnerships. Today's guest is someone who embodies the phrase sales-led partnerships. Cory Snyder is the head of sales and partnerships at Outbound Funnel, a 2-time exit leader with an incredible track record building partner programs at companies like Sendoso and Teamwork.com. He's also a CSA board alum and was named PartnerStack's Partnership Leader of the Year in 2022. Cory, really great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sweet. All right. Well, look, we start each interview with what we call Fast Five, which is simply 5 questions meant to warm you up, give the audience an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you before we get into the fun stuff. Ready for that?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, cool. First things first. What is your go-to bourbon when you're celebrating a big win, and why?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I have one. So when I worked for Teamwork.com, I had a chance to go out to Cork, and I happened to be in a pub. I don't know, it was really early in the morning, 1 a.m. maybe at that time. And the person, the bartender, if you want to call it that, was also drunk with us. And we went ahead and he gave us a free shot. And that shot was this thing called Clonakilty. And Clonakilty is a very specific Irish whiskey, and loved it. Delicious. Ended up buying like 3 bottles and bringing them home. And so I don't drink those often. They're kind of like on my shelf, very specific to it. And I have 2 bottles, one that tastes very much like a scotch, and then the other, it's just very peaty. And then the other one that's just a delicious whiskey, and it beats out Eagle Rare and some of the blends and some of the high-end ones, in my opinion.
Love it. Cool. Well, if you're listening, you're a big fan of bourbon, you've got a good recommendation for you. Yeah. All right. Next up, when it comes to kind of pressure testing partners to kind of see who's going to make it in the long run or not, what's a better partnership pressure test? 9 holes of golf, or a live panel presentation together?
Oh, that's a great question. I would go with the panel probably as far as a pressure test. With 9 holes, you're with 4 people. You know, it's that where
it's de-risked.
You potentially have a lot of people hearing what you're going to say. So we're going to go there.
Fair enough. Totally fair. Cool. All right. Next up, what's the fastest early signal you see that an agency or ISV motion will actually produce real pipeline within 90 days? The fastest early signal.
Partner interest, I guess. You actively have people hunting to be partners with you. If that's the case, you have 1 of 2 things that happens. 1 is you just have a great brand and you're making some moves in the market and you're getting some attention. Or 2, they have active pipeline. And historically, it's both.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think if you're the smaller fish, then obviously you need to do a lot of the hunting and convincing and persuasion. But if it feels really hard to get anything at all from your main point of contact on the partner side, it shouldn't be that hard if it's really meant to be something fruitful. Again, if you're in the smaller fish, you've got to hunt, you've got to convince the other side. But to your point, the more interest and more excitement that they show, I think that is a strong signal, if that's what you're laying down.
Agreed. And I would say, as a small fish, there's still ways to do it. There's still ways to get attention, and we'll probably run through some of those today. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Second last one here is, give me one sales-led habit that a partner manager could start this week that would help them start producing more quality pipeline.
That's a good question. I mean, though, if they have, I'll give a caveat. If they have a recruiter, a partner acquisition person, the first thing to do is train them on the right questions to ask, so you generate pipeline before they're even recruited. I.e., Smart. Asking them, do they have anybody interested? Why are they interested in your company? You have a pipeline, who's your ICP, and kind of get alignment on the IPP. But if you can, this is a massive change, which we can also talk about later, but we did this with Teamwork.com, where we actually had the acquisition person discuss the importance of pipeline and discuss the importance of partner registration. For the sake of, if they're interested and they go to our website and direct starts working them, sorry, you're kind of SOL. So we built kind of that like bit of education and fear in the partner acquisition side on why they want to generate pipeline as far as register them. Changed immediately. We had people, as soon as they signed up, register deals.
I love that. I mean, I love everything about that. To be honest, we could have an entire hour-long conversation on like that kind of phase of partner program setup. But one thing I really love there is, one of the most important KPIs that any partner program should be measuring and managing with respect to like the early stage of a new partnership is TTV, like time to value. And you can change what that definition looks like. Maybe it's like time to first deal or time to first close one deal or time to first revenue milestone. But what Cory just said, where you're effectively training whoever is responsible for like, outbounding to like book new partner demos and get into the discovery phase by asking questions like, hey, like, do you have anyone who's interested in our solution right now? Right? Because if you do, you can fast track yourself on like earning your way in our tiers program and getting your payouts. Like that is in direct service of shortening time to value, which is to say shortening your sales cycle length in effect. Does that kind of resonate with how you're framing that, Cory?
Yeah, 100%. We usually look at it from like, lagging indicators and leading indicators, but TTV is exactly the same in my eyes. You have a new program, your TTV should be different than an existing program, right? You should be looking at it from a perspective of your lagging indicator. When your early indicators are going to be acquisition, your lagging indicator may be pipeline, right? For a new program. An existing program, you're going to shift that forward and you're going to say your leading indicator is pipeline, your lagging indicator is actually revenue conversion. And then you look at each metric within that. That's why data is so important, and we harp on it, is data is so important. So you know where to put your TTV and how to build it. But in the partnership community, we talk a lot about white and gray, black and white, when in reality, most of the money's made in the gray. And what I mean by that is we come out with content saying, this is how you do a partner program, when in reality, there's so many elements as far as what partner type. And then you look at also how young is your partner program? Who's on the partner team, right? Is it one person, two people? So there's a lot of elements there that I think we miss as an opportunity to educate people. Is like, okay, my scenario. I was rebuilding an old truck of mine, a 70 C10, and there was one specific thing I was doing, which was I was putting a new fuel tank and fuel filter and fuel system in the truck. And I watched tons of videos on how to do it, and they did not explain this one thing, which was when you take the mechanical fuel pump off, there's a plate that goes over it. That's fine. There's a pin that is a solid rod inside that area. And the one thing they didn't explain is taking it out or putting it in. Do I leave it in? Do I take it out? What is it? And that's a big question. That's a big unknown. Like, what happens if I leave it in and it's not pushing fuel? Like, what could happen? Same thing, in my opinion, with partner programs is we go through all of this other stuff and we forget some of the small key points that are extremely valid, right? And extremely important. So anyways, tangent.
Look, we love analogies on the show, and Lord knows I come up with plenty of my own. That totally track. I think that speaks to the need for an operational mindset to be successful in partnerships. If you don't understand the dials and the variables with which you're working against,
yes,
you can get lost in the sauce and you don't know where to fine tune it. And the little particular details do really matter. And so this whole conversation started with Cory talking about how in the earliest stage of a new partnership, just literally how you run discovery can make a big difference. That was the whole point of this. And I totally agree. And as a final tip, and we'll move on, is what you ask in discovery can help fast track, some momentum, but also even in your application form, right? If you have like a www landing page where partners can apply, whether using a PRM or embedded CRM form, have a question like, hey, like, do you have a client you're looking to refer right now? Yes. Right. That way you can immediately triage that as like the highest priority for maybe even a more senior partner manager to actually take the reins. Right. So point being, those little details can make a big impact. And you need to know where to look to even get started.
Yeah, the applications I build out on the tech side are 30 questions. If they don't want to fill out, that's fine. They want to be a partner. But I'm collecting their ICP. So for many reasons, but data tells you what your ICP should look like 6 months later. And it's obviously we can dive in deeper in that, but that piece is so important. I think we underestimate it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm super happy to hear that you also are in the camp of longer application forms. This is a bit of a contrarian take that I am on the same side of you on, is like, I've literally, like, my intake forms are quite long as well. And I've got pushback from my bosses, I've gotten pushback from partners and even my own team of partner managers. They're like, well, why are we making it more difficult? And I'm like, look, it's so effing hard to stand up a long-term successful partnership. If they can't take the time to give me some information on day one, they sure as hell aren't going to be able to commit to the other stuff that I'm going to need them to. So it's like a self-selecting method to like disqualify the non-serious. And to your point, Cory, we get so much information that we can, and I always love, and now we're just going on a tangent, which we love to do on the show, by the way. What I love about the asking more questions is all the application forms that I've ever run for my partner program. I actually have a standalone website landing page, and I frame in a native forms feature from whatever CRM I'm using. So whether Salesforce or HubSpot. And what you can do is you can create custom field properties that when a new partner applies, that information that they're submitting actually maps to real properties at, say, the company level record in your CRM, which A, make sure it's tracked, but B, you can leverage automation to like automatically qualify, like, yeah, new application, here's all the information, probably tier 2 or tier 3 based on the input. So I love what you said there, Cory. Collecting more information in your partner application forms can save you a ton of time, but also help you isolate the top 10% of applicants when otherwise you're going to have to get into a discovery environment for every single one.
And you can enable them down the road. If you don't have the data you need in the sense of what materials do they need, what materials do they want, how do they onboard, who's the POCs potentially for there's so much data that just we don't realize. Why are we asking it now? Because in 6 months, it's going to be really, really important to not only cover our ass and save our jobs, but it also positions everything we do moving forward as far as how we do enablement, how we do onboarding, what programs that we create, how do we tweak our programs, you name it.
Totally. Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say, and we'll move on, is, in addition to the mid to long-term benefits, it also helps the short-term. Like if you do, in fact, have maybe a more junior partner manager or Pam owning like the discovery phase, well, guess what? Now, instead of wasting the first 34 minutes of the relationship asking for a bunch of information you could have captured in the application form, now you can walk in with a super tailored presentation that makes that partner feel like, holy moly, like this person really did their homework. They really listened to our intake. And so you can get to step 2 and step 3 much, much faster.
Yep. Dead on.
Sweet. All right. Last question of the Fast 5, which was meant to be fast, but this is how it usually goes, is let's talk about things that are overhyped, right? So I think there's a lot of fluff in the marketplace, a lot of echo chambers. In your opinion, what's one overhyped partner motion that you think needs to be sunset?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
There's so many. That's how many there
are. there are so many. I mean, arguably you could say MDF, is a dying art, and it's part. But the issue is, I think a lot of the motions make sense. It's, I think, within the motions that don't make sense. It's like MDF it makes sense for specific things, but it doesn't make sense for others. If you look at even, like, a lot of people say commission is irrelevant, I'm going to a point-based system. And it's like, well, that's not true either. It's how you look at it. It's that gray area that I talked about. It's like commission matters to get a conversation started, and it matters when it covers a head count. It doesn't get them selling. So you have to do the work in the middle. So that's where I'm like struggling to say which ones would I not recommend and which ones would I recommend. I find like the tricks and the things that are in the middle of the actual problem or motion to be the issue. But like MDF for me has been by far probably the least successful out of all of the things I've done in the 15 years in partnerships.
Yeah, totally fair. It can definitely work in the right circumstances, especially for like, long-term, really strategic partnerships where, you don't need that like immediate ROI detection on it. Like you just have confidence that, hey, look, like this is definitely pushing the ball forward. So I agree. It only applies to like a subset of all partnerships.
And it's where you use it.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, that was a great way to ramp things up. Now we'll start getting into some of our key segments. And we always start each guest with kind of your foray and entry point into partnerships, because none of us, did a bachelor's of partnerships, right? So we've all kind of ended up in this wild profession in different ways. So let's rewind the clocks and kind of walk through how you went from, say, lone SDR type rep to getting into the partner ecosystem. So take us back to that first, lead source with a person's name moment. Were you an individual rep? How did that kind of spark an idea to start to build your own referral network and ultimately lead you into partnerships as a whole?
Yeah. So for the most part, I'm a pretty competitive individual, always have been, specifically in sales, and worked for a company called Infusionsoft. Now it's called Keep. Started there, kind of followed my boss from University of Phoenix and realized, look, I have a knack for this. I'm pretty good at actually sales. I have a really high conversion rate. I'm number one and have been for like several years at University of Phoenix and now at Infusionsoft, and realized there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way than just being better at discovery or better at negotiations or better at your demo process, right? And so I started realizing leads that were coming in, some of them were easier to close. And so I started looking at lead source, and I saw this guy named South Ellsworth. Actually, surprised I remember his name still. South Ellsworth. He was like an affiliate type of guy that would put on, he put up a basically review page. He would review, let's say, Active Campaign, and then he would review Infusionsoft, and he put it up against each other, and he would have affiliate links that would go to those. And so he'd do a full deep dive breakdown of the products and kind of compare them. And he did multiple websites like this. And so we'd get these leads. So I just reached out to him and said, hey, I see the leads coming in from you. How are you doing this? And the inquisitive nature, I think, that you have to be when you're in sales and or partnerships. And so I just reached out to him and said, hey, what are you doing and how are you doing this? He broke the whole thing down. And I just said, look, it's up to you on what you want to do. I am the number one sales rep here, and I have been for 2 years. I know the system in and out. I'd love to be your guy. You can continue to send them through the system. I don't even know if I was allowed to do this, but there was no rules, so I took advantage of it. And he said, I would love that. And we built a relationship. And so every lead that he got automatically routed to me. And I was like, interesting. I wonder if I could do this with more and more people. So I started listening to calls and started realizing people are saying I was referred by so-and-so. So I just outbounded them. So I was doing my regular day job, and I started outbounding all of these people that were actively not necessarily partners, because we didn't really have an agency program at the time. And I just outbounded them, and I built like 20 to 25 relationships, and they were feeding me as one rep. And I eventually got one named Alexis Neely, who was, she might still be, but she was a family law attorney that became an influencer in that realm, and people listened to her. So we started pumping out webinars. We do a webinar a month or so, and I do an email series with her. I'd log into her account and send the emails for her. And I ended up gapping people by 2 months 2 months of revenue in the year. So it ended up just dominating. And I started teaching people how to do it, and very rare people want to put the effort in. And then it's just like year 2 years into doing this, they walked up and they said, hey, we want to start a partner program. We obviously know that you're already doing it. Do you want to do it? So I said, sure. And they gave me 6 people. And then I hired 6 more, and we ran 3 different partner programs, and we built Infusionsoft's partner program along with Brian Jambor, who helped on the program side. He helped on the program side. Him and I basically built this program from the ground up. I built the sales side. We built the agency program from 0 to 500 plus deals a month, millions and millions in revenue a year. And it was an incredible ride. And that's where I got a lot of my learnings and understandings of like how to actually work with these individuals, how to embed your product into their solution. When is the best timing, and who should you recruit? Should I recruit a 100 person agency, or do I recruit a 5-person agency that's not so deep into other programs that I can get in there and embed myself before anybody else does? So you learn all of these things, and you get to start educating the thing. But yeah, so I ended up doing that and built that program, and kind of been in partnerships ever since. I was just a lone account executive. We didn't have SDRs back then. So, 200 leads a month, just doing it.
I love it. I mean, thanks for walking us through that story. I really love that. And there's two key nuggets that I took from that. We're big on this show on especially for partner managers listening, to capitalize on what we call like signals, right? You can have a playbook and a framework, but that can only get you so far. I find that one of the biggest struggles partner managers have is they want to run a playbook, and even when they see a positive signal, they don't stop what they're doing and ruthlessly pursue it to the end to see how much value they can get from it. So here Cory is, he wasn't in a partnerships role. He's just noticing things, and his curious brain obviously took him down a path that obviously was quite successful. And sometimes it doesn't happen that way, but I'm a big fan of, hey, when you sense a signal, you have to stop everything you're doing and pursue it as fully as you can, because typically that's where the highest leverage comes from. So I have another comment to make, but I'll stop there, Cory. Does that resonate, just this concept of signal chasing, deciphering between signal and noise, and knowing when to keep your head down and when to stop and be like, you know what? That seems like a big one. I know I've got a full plate of shit I got to do, but I want to pursue that signal aggressively because I think it could lead me somewhere new.
Honestly, I like the way you put that, and I think that should be something you should be screaming from the rooftops, is the signals, because I don't think we think about it that way enough. And there's balance there, like you mentioned, like you got a whole plate of stuff to do, but I agree 100%. I think I never really looked at it that way. is signals, but that's the way I do it in partnerships. If I hear something that resonates, like specific verticalization or industry or something, I try to go
Exactly.
deep on that as much as I possibly can. I just never thought about it as a signal. I love that. I'll probably steal that language from you, but yeah, that to me 100%, or at least we have so many tools that record our conversations these days. Take 30 minutes and re-listen to your conversations or set up triggers or something, if you're using calling or whatever, like leverage that technology too to help you find those signals in case you miss them. But I would agree 100%. There's time, if you manage your time on your calendar well, there's time to go deep on those signals and with those partnerships and still not hurt your future kind of goals or your other list of crap to do.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the recorded calls, because 2 points on that. The first one is going back to your previous anecdote of, when you were scrappy AE listening to calls, that is actually a side note, low hanging fruit hack for anyone listening who is looking to figure out which potential partners to work with. Maybe you're the first partnership hire and you've got to kind of start the program. I love digging through Gong data recording or whatever call recorder you're using and search terms like, how did you hear about us, right? Every sales team should have a mandatory disco question that says, how did you hear about us? And it should be mandatory for the AEs to capture, and it should be hard-coded into your CRM, because this can honestly start to give you a lot of insights. And what you're looking for in this scenario is, hey, a certain partner or a certain influencer affiliate, so to speak, that just keeps coming up, right? Why is it that person is just interested in referring to you? You're probably going to have a 10x better chance getting something started with that person or that company versus cold outbounding some net new partner that's never sent you a lead. So I think that's a really low-hanging fruit place to start, is just analyzing your existing lead flow and finding companies or individuals who have a propensity for referring to you. Because to Cory's point, there's a reason they're doing that. They clearly believe in your solution or service, so why not start with them? Does that check out with you, Cory?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, even back then we didn't have recording software. To bring it old school, it was called the Y Connect. If anybody remembers that crap, where you actually had to tap in and sit with somebody.
Oh man.
But yes, on the recorded calls, I agree 100%. I think there's and we could probably do an hour just on that, because there's the recruitment aspect. There's potential opportunity to refer your partners services that they're struggling.
100%.
There's so many options, new partners, existing partners, all kinds of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can set up, for example, Gong to Slack notifications where it's like, hey, a partner excerpt was mentioned, or a potential referral op for a partner. Super easy to set up these workflows so you don't have to sift through hundreds of hours of calls. They can just automatically flag. Yep. Cool. To finish up on this early segment of your career, we like to ask how you got into it, but we also like to ask, what was one painful lesson you took from your early days of partnerships? I myself, one of the biggest mistakes I made early on as like a tech partner manager was I didn't understand how important it was to build really strong relationships across the org, right? Whether it be product, marketing, engineering, customer success. I just kind of took those for granted in the early days. So that was my big F up. So for you, I know you've talked about an early mistake, being overly optimistic with partner projections. How did you learn to balance excitement with a forecast that leadership can trust, if that's the early mistake that you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I would agree with you on yours as well. Like we've made plenty of those mistakes. Absolutely. And I talk about like, how do you communicate between account executives all the way to the board? But yeah, mine was definitely, and I saw this actually, this applies to me in leadership also. When I was at University of Phoenix in leadership, super optimistic, super excited, and really didn't double down on like the execution plan by individual and that kind of motion. And that's what got me stuck. And I used to use this phrase or use this visualization all the time of like 300, when he kicks the guy down the hole, from the movie 300. And because that's happened to me before, where I double down on this partnership and I'm not listening necessarily to signals. I'm just super excited. They match our ICP. There's tons of opportunity. And I'm not remembering that they're not executing on the other items, right? So we then created what we call the BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goal Planner, where we basically had what do you want to accomplish and by when? And then we would then put, this is what we need to do. This is what you need to do by this timeline. And we would then start building out that timeline for an operation plan or some sort of executable agreement, if you will, that we're going to go down. And that helped out a ton, but we'd get super excited. We double down. We spend 20, 30, 40 hours with this partner and they'd produce 0 results. And that's when I started pulling in the data heavily, long applications, started looking at specifically what our IPP, do they align with our ICP? Are they willing to double down? And if so, what are the things that I could throw at them? Same when you look at an interview process and you give them the very last thing everybody hates. You're like, I don't want to put together a PowerPoint. But you go through the process, you double down because you want that job. Same concept with a partner is now I started putting things in front of them that were like, okay, I'm going to test this. Are they willing to put in the effort that I'm putting in as well? So, hey, can you put together a one-sheeter about your company, about your ICP, whatever it may be? What's that one thing that would take them a couple hours or pulls an additional team? And that was the mistake that I made early on is I just didn't ask them for nothing. I just gave them a ton, got them into the organization, got them in front of my leadership, did all this stuff, and they did nothing.
Yeah. I appreciate the vulnerability there on the overestimation, over excitement. I think I relate to that totally. Very much like a big ideas, raw optimist, so to speak. And that can be really helpful because it's not always easy to come up with good ideas. And it can be really challenging to rally people around it. And it's hard to rally people around, kind of soft goals, right? Like no one really gets jazzed up to like pursue something that's not that big of an uplift and impact. So there is a lot of value in pursuing ambitious goals because that typically rallies the right people. But as a leader, to your point, you need to also ground that in reality because certainly in the executive spot, which you've been in for many years now, what I learned, my first foray into leadership and reporting to our CEO was, yes, delivering great outcomes is important, but the CFO and the CEO, they also want to understand that how accurate were your predictions relative to actual outcomes.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say that they would rather slightly less outcomes that were actually more predictable than they would the opposite, but that's kind of true. And one time our team grossly overperformed relative to expectation. And I thought my CEO was going to give me a big pat on the back and he was happy, but he was also like, why did we overperform by so much? Like, why did you set a forecast that was clearly much lower than what we did? And then conversely, if you have a big miss, you can also get your wrist slapped there. So Cory, help us understand the importance of like accurate forecasting from a leadership point of view and why it's for any head of partnership, VP of partnership, for example, listening right now. Why is it so important to, yes, be aggressive and ambitious, but also ground goals in reality? Because a quick way to burn your trust within the C-suite, the CEO, and the CFO is to be setting wildly outrageous goals that you fall well short of.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this is one of the biggest skill misses that we have right now in the partnership world is how to actually articulate and communicate forecast. And that has nothing to do with the skill set, I would say, of the partner leader or partner manager. It has everything to do with the nuances in partner programs. And, I've said this before and I can say it because I was in sales. Sales is very, it's not easy to kind of like look at it from a perspective of if you know your percentages from a SDR conversion to an AE conversion, SAO or whatever it may be to customer, you can literally say, okay, so if we generate 150 more leads, those turn into 30 opportunities, those opportunities turn into 15 customers, whatever the numbers are, then I can add headcount. And it's that easy, right? The percentages, we need a 30% conversion rate here or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Partnerships is not the case. You could have the perfect IPP, ideal partner profile, and that partner will do nothing. And you could have one that doesn't align with your IPP, sells a ton of small deals that are not necessarily within your ICP, but are crushing it. So that's where it becomes hard. So what I've learned over the years is how I communicate is important in the sense of my learnings. Here's what we're learning. We're learning that these partners align to our IPP. They're growing. Here's what we're doing from an enablement and onboarding standpoint to get their pipeline. Here's how we're creating. So there are some, just like in fantasy sports, right? You say high ceiling. There's an opportunity for breakouts. So I just communicate that right now I don't see any pipeline coming from these partners, but there is a possibility. And if it does, it will be a large deal. So be aware that is. But what I do is I say, here's our pipeline of what we're actively working. So I do that today. I'm like, we have 150K in pipeline. of the ones I'm confident on are about 75K, and here's why, and here's who it is. There are some variables there that are missed. Now, it's more information than they're used to getting when it comes to the sales side. But that is also part of our job to educate our leadership on what it means. Partnerships is nuanced. It is not easy. Each partner program, for the most part, is different, the whole 9 yards. So long story short, I like to give them more detail than I need to, specifically at the beginning of the month. My leaders hated the way that I forecasted. And the reason why is I always started low. And they're like, all right, why you start low? Because if I go any higher, I'm making up numbers. This is what's in my pipeline. And they'd be like, yes, but what do you think you're going to hit this month? I'm like, just put me down for 50K. But just know that I don't know yet because I don't have the pipeline moved in there yet. So there are nuances there. And I try to balance that with knowing my sales leader and helping them be able to articulate for me as well, build confidence in them with your CRO, whatever it may be. But kind of in my monologue, it is tough, but in my opinion, overly communicate. Know your deals. The reason why we get in trouble a lot is because you don't know your deals. They're going to be like, oh, what's up with Geico? And they'll be like, oh, it's in the works. Okay, what does that mean? Have you had conversations with the partner? Have you multi-threaded? Have you done this? Well, no, not yet. We're still waiting to hear back from the partner. You're going to get screwed. Why is that in pipeline? Right? Yeah. We should be thinking about the same way as sales in the sense of, do you have the details in every detail of that deal, where it's at? Do you know where it's at in the partner's pipeline? The whole 9. And that's how you start forecasting better, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great rundown. And that's applicable to any seniority level partnership pro listening, whether you're a partner manager or you're head of or a VP of partnership. That should give you a good framework. And two quick points, and we'll keep it moving. One, I think that's a skill that partner managers are really slow to develop, is this pipeline hygiene in management. To be honest, you really need to develop skills akin to what an AE has with respect to managing their pipeline. Your own pipeline of partners, treating them like a pipeline, and each deal is like an actual individual partnership, but actually your sales deals that have your name on it that you sourced or brought into pipeline, you need to be ruthlessly monitoring those, to Cory's point. And anyone who's ever worked for me as a partner manager and reported to me, they know that in pipeline review, my expectation was that you knew every single detail about every single deal that had your name on it as partner manager owner. Because if you don't, you have no way of projecting and predicting where you're going to fall quota wise, and you just can't be that helpful in helping the AEs. So I think that's one key thing. And then going back to reporting up to leadership and setting goals, it is a really scary and difficult thing to do as the departmental leader, whether you're director, VP level, or head of level. Setting goals is so difficult because it directly impacts your job security, right? It directly impacts your commission structure, because that's literally the denominator used, say, quarterly to calculate your commissions. And it sets the quotas for your team, which impacts their job security and their commission. So it's quite literally one of the most important things to get right. Cory laid out a good framework. I think for any early stage partnership leader who's maybe just joined and you don't have the benefit of historical data to guide, say, bottom up projections, I think setting firm numbers is fine. But I'm a big fan of promising and committing to just quarter over quarter growth from a top line revenue perspective, and a continual improvement in your profitability of the team, right? When I joined my last company as head of partnerships, I said, hey, look, we can set some annual forecast for the next year, but to be honest, it's going to be meaningless. What I can commit to is each quarter we're going to grow and we're going to become more profitable. This is the least profitable we're ever going to be on day zero. New partnership team. We have full ramp quotas. We don't have any existing partnership revenue coming in. So this is by far going to be the least profitable we're ever going to be. But I promise that if you zoom out quarter over quarter, the revenue will increase, and the efficiency of the team, as measured by how much do we spend relative to how much we bring in, that will also get better. And then finally, after say 6 to 10 months, now all of a sudden we have the benefit of historical data. So we can start hard coding and formal forecasts. So I think that's the better way. And to be honest, that the way that partnership leaders should be compensated in the early days is just growth and efficiency, not so much some specific target, because it's monopoly money in the early days. And then eventually you can figure out hard numbers. Does that jive with you, Cory? 100%.
And one thing I'll call out that you said, I called out last year at Jason Yarborough's Arcadia Leadership Summit or experience, is the financials. Do you know how much your team is costing, and do you know when you're going to cross the profitability mark, right? So, and I can tell you, it did surprise my CFO when I asked him, how much is my team costing the company? And it was that simple. I had no like intentions of leveraging that or anything like that. I wanted to know, because part of me knowing, if I know that, by the way, by middle of this year, I am now profitable, I can start hitting that line as far as like, okay, we're profitable. Let's keep moving in this direction. Our team is a bit more safe from a layoff perspective or from those vulnerabilities that we're kind of held against. But knowing that how much your team is costing the company, all in, insurance, everything, what is your all in number, is super important, because one, it shows you care about the financials of the company. And two, now you got a mark as far as number one, I'm going to go quarter over quarter. Absolutely. But now I have a mark. As soon as I make my team profitable, I'm going to make sure that the executive team knows, like, hey, we've been working hard. We've been trying to get this team to profitability. It looks like we're at profitability. Now we're going to try to 2 to 3x that profitability and be the most profitable team you have in this company.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think that's super smart, and to be honest, must have for any partnership leader to have those really important conversations with finance, because the more they believe and buy into the model and support you on it, the easier things will get for anything in the future. But I also think it's important to have some type of transparent conversations around that topic with your direct reports. So as an example, last year when I was scaling up my partnership team, we're starting to grow, things are going well, and I had to increase quotas to like substantiate growth. And there's always some pushback within the team whenever you increase quotas, right? Because people are like, oh, like, that's scary for my bank account. And one of the most powerful workshops I had was like, I gave them as like most transparent as I possibly could presentation on like everything. Like, here's our team budget. It's 1.37 million. Okay. 78% of that is salary, right? So like we're expensive. We're spending this much on events. We're spending this much on this. And they could see that we weren't quite in the black from a profitability perspective. And I say, hey, look, we're not quite there yet, but if we can ramp up to hit this new quota threshold in the next couple of months, you'll see based on the data that we will be profitable, which will do what? It'll unlock more investment from the company. We can hire more people. We can go to more events. And it was an eye-opening event for the team. They're like, okay, shit, like it's hard to argue that. Like, Chris is being super transparent. It's clear that we're not profitable yet. So why would the company invest more in us as of today? Right. But if we can grow by, the 15 to 20%, then all of a sudden we can really unlock resources. So I had leaders do the same exercise with me. So I found it really valuable to have that type of transparent exercise as well with my team.
Yep, I agree 100%. And honestly, I do the same thing with my kids. Like, I'm transparent with our financials. I don't give them all of the details, but they know where we're at, why we're making the decisions we're making as far as vacations, or my kid's at college and it's, it's $1,000 a month or whatever it may be. And so it's a balancing of like those things, but also helps them understand like how we think about the world. And I think same applies in if we don't know our numbers for our personals, then we're screwed. We're just spending money we don't have. If we do the same thing in business, they'll never trust us with any of the financials, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as always, transparency is a great ingredient for success in all fronts. Speaking of data, that takes us into one of our last topics, which is about, quantity and quality, a data first path to an ideal partner profile, right? And so you're known for starting with scale, volume first before kind of tightening to quality. So this next question for you, Cory, is, walk us through how you collect and use data in those first 6 months, for an example, to identify your ideal partner profile. Touched a bit on it earlier, but as a caveat, I personally believe nailing your ideal partner profile, i.e. who you invest in working with, is the singular biggest determinant for success, other than the people you hire to run your partner program. Outside of that, I think it's the most impactful thing, right or wrong, is nailing your IPP. So walk us through how you collect and use data to really identify what that looks like.
Yes. And I would say this works heavily in SMB and mid-market programs. And enterprise, obviously, it's a bit different. I still think the application process and collecting data still aligns. It's the volume is like, you do have to take a little bit more time there, but volume in relativity, right? In an enterprise program, you may only have 15 partners. So go recruit 45 and get the 15 that are really going to double down on you. But I look at it from a perspective of, for the most part, when I go into partner programs, I have like an 85% idea. You're probably the same. We probably have like an 85% idea of what our IPP is going to look like. What we don't know is necessarily how to, if their ICP aligns, right? So that's where the data makes a lot of sense. When you look at an IPP, you're like, okay, they are this number of employees, they work in this vertical or this industry, and blah, 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 right? Whereas, what perfect example is part of what I collect in data is who else do they partner with? And the reason why that's important is because now I know who else to go reach out to create a partnership with. I did this with my spoker. I said, Mike, call rail, dude. I'm getting hit up. I show that like half of my partners are also your partners. We should do something deeper. That is the benefit of collecting all the data. That is the benefit with getting all of these partners. And then what allows you to do is you start breaking a ton of shit internally because you have built a system to only bring in 5 partners at a time. So when I started at teamwork.com, we had 40 partners. We brought on 44 in the first quarter. So we more than doubled the number of partners we had in the first quarter, and we broke a ton of stuff, i.e. how they actually came into the system. Where as far as agreements, we were doing DocuSigns with 2 different DocuSigns, which is totally dumb. So we completely removed those and moved it in the PRM, and now we got that streamlined. We moved the entire application process initially to the PRM of the 30 questions. But what we did is we ended up putting in an entire workflow. So we created the pipeline inside of HubSpot. As soon as they signed up, it automatically closed the pipeline, sent a Slack saying congratulations. We then sent a Slack and created a project inside of teamwork.com for the creation of the sandboxes. So which was all manual tasks. So we put Caroline at the time, we put her in a position where she could recruit 15 partners a month, whereas she wasn't able to before because of all the manual tasks. So that's the other benefit. When you go hard and you start, recruiting like aggressively, and you start scraping your competitors' list, and you start going after their companies, you start scraping and hiring people off of Fiverr to scrape lists and do all this stuff, and then you're enriching the data. When you do that and you give yourself an opportunity to actually go after and hunt 15 partners, which actually we're at about a 50% conversion rate. So we were hunting about 30 partners a month. We're creating new pipeline about 30 a month. Then we convert about 15. When you do that, you realize all your inefficiencies, which is a whole additional benefit
100%.
To going volume, right? So it's not just the data, it's all your inefficiencies to get your data. Then you start figuring out, oh shit, we really don't have a great enablement process or onboarding process. What's our onboarding need to look like? And then you use the partners for the first 3 months to create your onboarding process and methodology as you work with them. And then 6 months down the road, you have now cleaned up all your inefficiencies. You've streamlined your entire processes. You have now created an acquisition way of creating pipeline before they're even acquired. You've now created your enablement process. You've now created your onboarding methodology. And it's all done because you went after volume and the partners told you what they wanted and what they needed. And the way that I articulated this to the executive team was, we need to figure out our ideal partner profile, or this is completely pointless. We're going to be shooting in the dark. We'll have forecasts all over the place. What I'm going to do though, and this is the way that we kind of did the data, is like, these partners are not in our IPP. They became a partner, but they're generating us revenue now, which is buying us time to build relationships with the partners that are within what we think will be our growth mechanism for the future. And so that's the way I articulate. It's like, look at all the pipeline. We went from generating 100K in pipeline to 1.5 million in pipeline the first year, right? We did 100K in revenue. We did, by the time, unfortunately got laid off, but by the time I got laid off, we were over 600K in revenue in 8 months. Like, so the process works. And while it was a lot of work and we had one partner manager managing, 250 partners, they're not actually managing 250 partners. They're managing 50 or 60 active partners. And
exactly.
The rest we consider long tail that will eventually bring in deals here and there, but we don't have to actively manage them. So anyways, that's the reason why I go quantity to quality. And then once about 6 months hits, 6 to 9 months, then I start saying, okay, we now have a
time to tighten it up.
circle. Yep. Just like in Fortnite, we got the smaller circle. And now we can start dialing in, okay, where are these partners? Who are these partners? Oh, it looks like we're getting a ton from this competitor. They must be struggling. So let's go scrape their marketplace listing and let's go put some retargeting ads out there and get out of them. Let's do doing some outbound. And it worked incredibly well.
I love that. That was a great breakdown. A lot of folks listening struggle with that early phase of partnership. How do you design your IPP? Okay, once you start getting applications, how do you actually run proper discovery? So I'm a big fan of what you said there, Cory, of just like get into it, get messy. Things are going to break. We're big fans of breaking things on this show. And I think you do want to have some sense of what your discovery and onboarding flow is going to look like, because once you start doing good outbound, your calendar is going to fill up and time shrinks all of a sudden. So like you do want to be somewhat prepared, but ultimately you do want to just get into the weeds, because you can design in a Notion document what your IPP looks like till the cows come home, but until you get punched in the face on like real discovery calls, you're not really going to know. So I'm a big fan of that. But we're almost at time. So Cory, one of the last questions for you, and we're big fans of training education within the Partnership Mastermind. So one of the questions we always ask our guests is just advice that you might have for the next generation. And obviously you've mentored and hired a lot of partner pros. So the last question is, when you're hiring, what signals do you look for? Specifically traits, for an example, maybe, AEs, so to speak. So what are some signals that you look for when hiring top partnership talent? And as a final question, what advice might you have for partner managers in the modern world looking to kind of get ahead and maintain their job security?
Yeah, good questions. And by the way, props to you guys, because Caroline, my partner manager who went through your training, is killing it. She's off to the next gig and she's doing well. So thank you to that little plug there for you. That was not intentional or paid for. Yeah, those are some good questions. I mean, I'll start with kind of the advice. The advice I would give partner managers is, again, kind of what we talked about today, is relationships generate revenue, but without revenue, there is no relationship. And what I mean by that is, like, if you can't go into the customer's business and be inquisitive and understand the partner, what they do and how they do business, and really kind of like try to get on their side of the table. And we say this in sales, get on their side of the table, sit next to them, that kind of thing. Same concept is with partnerships. Understand their nuances. Where are they at as far as, like, do they have the ability to even double down with you guys in the partner program? Do they have the head count that has the flexibility to be able to take on a couple hours to do things with you? That's one. Two, figure out how to articulate what you do to account executives, SDRs, and customer success. And the reason why is because while we can communicate to our leaders, if you don't have an army screaming your name, partnerships, it's going to be really hard to go bottom down or top down. So I'm a big fan of going bottom up. I had one manager that was like, he started, I think, like 60 days, and he's like, Cory, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? That's a loaded question. And he's like, all I hear about from my sales team is Cory and the partnership team. And it was because we were diving in using Crossbeam to help them close deals. And so think about it from that perspective, is like, how can you build these relationships internally as much as you are externally, and get them saying your name, because that is going to cover your ass. It's going to be, yes, there's a bit of influence revenue kind of fluff metric in there a bit, but at the end of the day, screw that metric. Just go in and help people close revenue and close deals, and you will then see the revenue stream on your end. And partners, if you feed partners will feed you. So that's one thing. And then as far as like roles, and when I look at individuals and who I hire, experience is one thing. And, arguably I do love experience, but what I want is somebody that's hungry. I want somebody that is, and this is obviously everybody, like, of course you want somebody that's hungry, but I also want them to be inquisitive. I want them to be competitive. I want them to be, if I can figure it out in an interview, I would love to figure out, do they have self-awareness? Do they have the ability to own their mistakes? And do they have the ability to, like, not only recognize a problem, but come with a solution? Right. And it's tough to kind of figure out how to do that in an interview. But, we say it within our family. It's like my kids will come up and they'll be like, oh, I have a headache. I'm like, did you do anything about it? In other words, did you take some medicine? No, then you can't, then be quiet. You can't complain. You've done nothing to fix it. Now, if you got a headache and you've taken Tylenol, it's a matter of setting in it, but great. I hope it, figures out. But we use inside the workspace, we basically say, if you don't have a solution, you're just bitching. So you need to come with a solution. There's a problem, a solution. So anyways, bit of a tangent on both of those, but hopefully that helps with some.
No, super helpful in terms of what you're looking for. And once you actually have people in seat, how they can best level up. But the last thing I'll say is I totally agree on this concept of, in terms of like strengthening your position within your own company, getting noticed better, like the more people that kind of know what you're doing. I love that kind of phraseology, so to speak. And I think one of the two simplest leading indicators for how good or not a partner manager is, two variables, and you can kind of measure them. A, how many people at your company know what you do and collaborate with you? That is a direct correlation. If it's just your partnership team and no one else knows what the hell you're doing, including AEs, which would be the worst case, then you're not the hero of the story that you think you are. But then on the other side, on the external front, how many people do you have relationships with at your key partners? Right? That is measurable, right? Because within your CRM, you can map your partner contacts. So everyone is comfortable with your main POC on the other side, who's typically another partner manager. But if that's the only person you're talking to, it's a friendship, not a partnership. So do you know their boss? Do you know the sales director? Do you know the VP of customer success? Do you know someone senior on the product side, especially for tech partnerships? So the more people you know and know you and you have relationships with, both internally and externally, that to me is an immediately great proxy for how strong that person is. And if no one knows who you are and what you're doing, probably you're not having a big impact and probably your job security is not there. So this isn't meant to scare people, but it's meant to say, hey, look, you may not, we all think we're the heroes of our own universe, right? But we need to be self-aware, to Cory's point, and humble ourselves and ask ourselves, hey, if I up and vanish tomorrow, would anyone at my company notice? And if so, who, right? And why? And if the answer is not many people, then, now you have an honest account of where your focus needs to be on it, really ramping up your visibility.
100%. Yep.
Sweet. Cool. Well, look, we are at time. Cory, this is honestly fantastic. I was super thrilled to get you on the show because I know you bring that no BS tactical stuff, which you absolutely did on today's episode. So encourage everyone to follow and engage with Cory's great content. If you're looking to partner, then definitely hit Cory up so you can get that started. But Cory, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Until next time. Thanks, everybody.